Here we have a Subaru WRX STI transmission, actually a 2016 model year car, and vehicle was brought in. It seemed like all the forward gears were shifting okay. Looking at the gears here, just looking at the blocker rings, clearance in the blocker ring into the gear seems to be okay. Maybe a little thin there, but still within specification. Here as well, these blocker ring clearances between the dog teeth on the gear and the blocker ring itself, we have some clearance, so that's a good thing. This one looks like it a little bit thin there in terms of clearance. Have to check and see whether that should be replaced. Guys that are running these things, a high RPM engine, and at higher RPM with trying to shift it quick, you can damage the blocker rings, and when the blocker rings become damaged, that's what causes them to grind, because this slider assembly is then not synchronized to the gear speed, and you wind up with that grinding noise. It's actually a dog teeth on the gear and the dog teeth on the slider. That's what you hear grinding. So anyway, this one had a problem very specific to reverse. Reverse is a synchronized component. This is the synchronizer blocker ring assembly for reverse, and just looking at it here, we can see it looks like someone may have been leaning into this thing pretty heavy. So just as there's clearance here between the blocker ring and the gear, we should have clearance here. It's a multiple piece blocker ring. If we look, when this is in there, there's very little space between this inner ring and the actual blocker ring itself, the brass blocker ring material. So, and this is actually using several elements there. So we have this piece, and then this goes inside of this one here. So once that's all fitted together, you basically can increase the surface area by increasing the amount of components and the engagement surface area between the brass and the steel. So, and then this assembly goes in here. So being that was being leaned on, whether the clutch was dragging or some other issue, it's difficult to say, but the damage that we had, this was probably grinding at one point. We look at these dog teeth. Those dog teeth are basically, they should be pretty pointy, almost like the end of the dog teeth is here. Okay, you can see that these are all machined off. In addition, damaged the gear itself. So another indication that was being leaned into is here's the fork, okay, and the fork pad itself. What we found, the fork pads are very, very thin. You can see how they're kind of smeared there. And when we looked, we saw a piece of the fork pad actually was laying in the transmission. This is the rear differential, or what other people call the center differential. The STI actually has an electronic element that can pulse width modulate a electromagnetic clutch inside and give various degrees of traction to the front and rear, which is a very, very nice feature of the STI. So all in all, the unit itself doesn't look like as some of them that we've seen that are catastrophically damaged, but we do have some definite parts requirements. Key thing is making sure that we have adequate and correct clutch release to ensure that we don't have a repeat occurrence of the same failure.